Dude, we're on. What the hell are you looking at? There's nothing up there. The camera's right there. Seriously.
Jeepers creepers, where'd you get those?
You know, I think that song would be creepy even if it wasn't involved with this guy right here. Of course, that song was written a long time before the movie of Jeepers Creepers was ever introduced, and we first met this amazingly badass horror monster villain. That's right, today we're looking at a life-size bust from Hollywood Collectibles Group, or HCG, of the Creeper from the Jeepers Creepers films. Now, specifically, I think this is modeled after the first one, although there wasn't a lot of variation, I believe, in the actual creature from film to film. Now, I'm not only a huge fan of these films, but a huge fan of the Creeper himself. I think he's one of the coolest creatures to come out in the last 20 years or so. I still remember where I was watching Jeepers Creepers 1. And honestly, I thought it did a great job with suspense. Even at the beginning, when you didn't even know it was about a creature like this, that big truck trying to run those kids off the road freaked me out. Now, while I didn't think the movie was scary, I thought they did a great job with suspense. And then they introduced a creature like this. So if you're unfamiliar or you just don't remember, this creature right here comes out every 23 years and he feeds on humans for 23 days. He chooses body parts from people that he likes, specifically based on how afraid they are. There's actually some cool stuff on the back and I forgot to start spinning them for you. But anyway, it started out as one film that did very well for itself. I thought the second film was equally as good, not quite as good. The third film, a little if, but I like how it told a lot of the backstory, and you saw some different angles of the Creeper. So he doesn't always look like this. He kind of looks like an old man because he wears a big trench coat and a hat, and these mandibles that you see actually retract. And I think I recall in the first movie, the weird character, the lady who was kind of like a psychic or whatever it was, that she said that he wants to be a man or he pretends to be a man, something weird like that. And he seems unstoppable. That's what's really cool. He can also fly, by the way, on top of the fact that he seems almost invulnerable. So Hollywood Collectibles Group made this, and I actually had this on pre-order a long time ago, but then it was delayed, and I saw some of the in-production photos, and I was really unsure. So I went ahead and canceled my order and got my deposit back. However, I actually own this piece right here. And now I'm not a big fan of this. So this was a custom made. It was quite a bit cheaper than this. It came with a lot of breakages that you can still see. Plus, it's just not very good. So I wanted to replace it with something. And I decided, you know what? Let me hit up my boy at Comic Concepts and see if he can get me this for a little bit cheaper than retail, as most of their stuff is. And nonetheless, Josh didn't let me down again, so he was able to nab me this a little bit under retail, which was fantastic, and they do points at Comic Concepts as well. So he was able to get it for me, and I think I had it 3 days later. So here he is in the collection. Really appreciate Comic Concepts. I put a link in the description below. It's not an affiliate link or anything, but I always get great customer service from them. I try and avoid Sideshow nowadays if I can. Just a personal preference. So today we're going to do an in-depth review on this piece, and I'm going to let you know right now, some of the worries that I had initially are definitely there. And it seems like it's always like that with HCG, or Hollywood Collectibles Group. This is actually the 4th or 5th piece I believe I've owned from them. And every single one was a little disappointing, with one exception. And I think that was the 1/4 scale version of this character that I actually had. I bought him off eBay, but he came all broken up, so I had to return him. But I have their Alien Queen wall mount. Again, like I said, I think it was a little disappointing, mainly with the paint, which you'll see a pattern here. And then I got their Sill piece right here, which is an older piece, and I got it for a hell of a deal. So I'm not really complaining about the fact that it's not very good. In a post-edit edition, I totally forgot they actually have their power loader as well. Now, this piece was one of the first reviews I ever did, which is probably why I forgot about it. But let's jump into talking about this piece right here. We're going to do the full review, talk about concept, paint, sculpt, value, and I'm really iffy on this. In my opinion, it's the best Reaper out there, at least at the most affordable cost. I know there is one that's a lot more lifelike, but he doesn't have his mandibles open, and it's about $3,000, which is 3 to 4 times more expensive than this. So let's kick it off, as always, and we're going to start with concept of this piece. So with a bust, sometimes the concept's a little boring, but I love what they did with this. The bottom is an adaptation of his truck. So he drives this huge old rusty truck, and that's what the grill, the front grill of this is. They do have the name of the movie below, which I absolutely hate. You guys know that. If you don't know this is Jeepers Creepers, you probably won't appreciate it anyway, but I love what they did. It gives this piece a lot of height, gives it more presence. However, what I hate that they did is how the arms are just cut off the way they are. These plain black aspects. You saw it was black around the back. You guys know I hate that in a bust. I think it's a big miss. But as you move up, another key part of the creeper, I think, is to make sure his mandibles are out. He is so much more fierce. It is definitely the way to go. In my opinion, I love that they did that. Now, there are some design complications with it we'll talk about, but big props to them. I think one thing that's a little missing on this is his clothes. He was always wearing clothes. If he took his hat off, for the most part, he still had his big baggy trench coat. But I can get over that. That's not a big deal. The sides on the arms, that's what I'm not a fan of right there. It just cuts off. Now, if you're looking at it just like that, it's okay. But as you can imagine, we don't always look at statues from just one angle. So I give him a ton of props for the base, for the mandibles, for the size. I think it's definitely scaled accurately, which we'll talk about design. But I can't give it perfect, so I think this knocks it down to a 4 out of 5. I'm okay with it being plain and black in the back, but I think the shoulders, something else should have been done. Now granted, if I really wanted to, I could get an old trench coat and create something like that, or have Mrs. X do it. But design, let's talk about that. There's not a lot to it because it is a bust, but believe it or not, it was 9 different pieces. Check out the unboxing and assembly. A rather large art box, and a little bit beat up because UPS doesn't like me. And check out this amazing art box. It is just wow. Sense the sarcasm. Obviously there was no art box, not a big deal for me, but I do have a conference call scheduled with all the HCG executives. Standard white foam, and then it consisted of 1 layer. Now the creeper itself is permanently attached to the base, and then the mandibles are all separate. So all these mandibles are color coded. Now with that being said, there are obviously seam lines. Here's the pictures right here. The seam lines suck. They're not very good. However, when you're looking at them straight on, you don't see them as much. You still see them. As you see, it's right where the knuckle of the mandible is. Did I call them tentacles earlier? They're mandibles. But it's right where that is. So I think that helps, but still it's kind of nasty. Now, I don't have a better solution for this because you definitely do not want to ship it as one piece. It will break in shipping, there's no doubt about that. So I'm not going to fault them huge for that design. The sides also play into the design as well, and I think one way they could have solved that is offered a little trench coat or half trench coat that went right there, especially, when you're paying near $1,000 for something like this. Let's get the size of him. So the widest point is probably his shoulders, and that is 20 inches or so. The tallest point is that top mandible, is 30 inches, just under 30 inches. And the deepest point, I'm going to say, is the base is 11 inches. So actually, he'll fit quite nicely on my bust display. That's in my movie theater room. You can check out what that looks like right here. You can also check out exclusive pictures on the Extreme Channel Facebook, Instagram, and now TikTok. I'm doing some videos on there, so make sure to check that out as well. Really nothing else going on with design. So as a negative, the seam lines in the knuckles, this right here. Now, they could have minimized the seam lines. They could have added trench coat. They could have done some more of the skin texture right here. So I think for those reasons, it's a 3 out of 5 on the design. Paint and sculpt, unfortunately, I wouldn't say it was a disappointment because I didn't really have high expectations. But you'll see that it doesn't match the caliber of a lot of other life-size busts, even some within this price point. But let's take a look. All right, so as usual, we'll start down here at the bottom. As I said, I really like this. I like how they incorporated the truck. I like the rustic effect to it, the black and coppers that they mixed together. Would have been cool if it was more metal. So you can obviously tell that this was sculpted, resin or polystone or a mix of whatever. It would have been neat, or if they could have even had a translucent base there with a little bit farther back. I don't know about stability purposes, but it's got this effect all over it, kind of like cakey, messy. Part of it is dust from the box. Part of it's not, though. It's really like kind of layered on, and I think that's pretty intentional. One thing we didn't look at during design is on the back here, you have the Be Eating You license plate, which I think is a fantastic addition. It looks kind of cheap, but it's in the back, so you'll never see it. Now, while we're looking at the back, he does have his hair. Now, I always hated his hair. I thought it was, it made him look kind of stupid in my opinion. And not only do I think it looks stupid on this bus, but it's very poorly done. So they kind of just glued it on there, as you see. And this isn't hair. I mean, I'm sure it's some hair of some type, but it almost looks more like string or yarn. Thankfully, it's on the back. So I'm not gonna lose any sleep over that, but pretty poor quality in my opinion. Here's the black matte sides. You do see a little bit of reflection because I have giant spotlights right there. It's fine, like I said, I think the big miss, some staining from the box there. The big miss is really that they could have incorporated some of the skin over. And looking at the skin, on the lower half of the torso, you don't have as much, I almost want to call them scales or just really bad acne. We'll say that. They're larger, they're farther spaced together, and you have a lot more red and purple colors kind of mixed in. It's kind of a nice variation, and I don't remember too many scenes where we actually saw his torso right here. I know when he flew off a few times, maybe he lost his jacket, so a lot of this is probably open to interpretation and the licensor. But it looks fine. I don't like how distextured it is, and even up here it looks kind of sloppy, the scales when you look close. The micro detail just isn't there. It looks like a poor print quality. And you see a few more of those purple highlights up here, but it's more of a darker green, black, and grays mixed in. What I do like about him, the back of his head almost reminds me of like a brain or something of that nature. But look here, you can see where the print is very poor right up here. Or maybe they just slapped on too much paint. Maybe they spilled paint on there, who knows. But the variation of colors is kind of cool. Depending on the lighting and the angle you're looking at, it greatly changes. Now, who we fooling? You bought this for the portrait, or I bought it for the portrait. First, on his mandibles here, I want to look at, I like the high gloss on the spikes sticking out. I really like that. Looks really good, very sharp. So on his face, they did a few different things here, as I generally say. So you can see kind of these striations of almost musculature pattern of where the mandibles go back. I like that a lot. I think it looks really good. The sculpt's nice on it. And then the use of the colors in there works well. And then this part that the mandibles were kind of covering, again, kind of insinuates almost a brain. I doubt that's what it was. But I like how up here you have this dark green, gray color, then it mixes in some of those fleshier tones. And you see those fleshier tones on the flaps of the mandibles as well. However, it doesn't look that great. And I think it's a mix of the paint and sculpt that it's a little bit of a miss. But I do like the spikes coming out of his face. They almost look like teeth. I like the almost enamel look to them, the black slowly moving to yellow and white. His teeth are done quite well. And I like the fact that they didn't do the open mouth version, because he always had this sear, sinister smile, so you kind of get that with this. Around his teeth, the gums also look quite nice. I'm not sure about the lips and the structure around that, or even down here, the pointy ball sack chin. It looks very flat. I think this should have had a little bit more moist effect. Some drool would have been cool. I rhyme all the time. And then I love these deep red, purple colors right here on the bottom part. I think if they added a little bit more of that up here, it would have been a nice effect. Nose has almost like an interesting gash, and I'm not talking about the one going vertical, but the horizontal one. And I assume that's accurate to the creeper. You see a few more of that scale-like aspect, but that's about it on the face. It's almost overpowering how much is on the torso. Now let's look at his eyes. Bad paint job on these. They are a little bit crooked. That's why I keep joking about him looking up. You can really see it right here. They still follow you though, so I think that's nicely done. And eyes are incredibly hard to paint. My wife has very much discovered that, especially I imagine on a life size. I'm not really sure. And I don't know how accurate that is. I don't know if they were blue in the movie. I assume they were, otherwise whoever holds the license to the Creeper movie wouldn't have signed off on it. But yeah, so really some pros and cons. I think definitely the base is nice. The torso, tons of opportunity. The portrait, some good things, some bad things. Last thing is, the mandibles do look a little cheap and plastic looking. Some of them. And I don't like how it completely changes color. I think the transition of color should have been a lot better on that. And there we go. All right. So I really like the base, as I said. His skin seems okay. Now, granted, you didn't get a lot of close-ups. I wish there would have been a little bit more of a moist effect on him. He seemed a little bit more slimy, other than in the areas that they had it. I wish they would have done a little bit darker red around the gums and this fold right here. So definitely some paint opportunities. I think the sculpt's really good, actually. I think that it's really the paint that kind of draws it off. Some of the skin textures we talked about, not so much there. But paint, we're going to go ahead and give the paint a 3 out of 5 at best. I think it's 3 out of 5 at best, especially when you include what I think is a QC issue with the eyes. Sculpt, I'm going to give it a 4 out of 5. I actually like it quite a bit more. And it makes it such a shame that they did a crappy job painting, but you typically see that with HCG. Now, value on this piece. So he retailed at $1,000. They made 500 of these. You know, that's a pretty competitive price for a bust, especially one that's this big. So I'm not going to knock them for that, but they could have taken the time to do a little bit better on the paint, especially since that doesn't really cost you anything to do better on the paint. But I don't think you get any life-size busts nowadays, brand new, that come out for really under $1,000. So I think the value is still fair. There's not a lot in this arena, like I said, of this character, and it has a weird cult following. So I think the value is actually a 4 out of 5 on this piece. But does this have the X factor? You know, unfortunately, I'm displaying this next to ECC, Queen, Cool Props. It doesn't hold up against some of those. So that's actually going to make it a little bit worse, but it's in a little bit of a darker area. So I think that really helps, because we never really saw this character in full light either. So I don't think it's a 5 out of 5 statue. I do like it a lot. I think it's pretty cool. It's pretty scary. I know my children and wife will hate it. But in the end, I can't get past some of those huge glaring paint issues and some of the few design issues I talked about. So I think it's a good statue. It's a 3 out of 5. And as a reminder, 3 is still a good score on this channel. It's you get what you pay for. It's just nothing out of the ordinary. That's all I got for today. So make sure, hit the like button, drop me a comment, and hit that picture of me to subscribe if you haven't yet. Don't know why I'm talking like this. Jeepers, creepers, where'd you get them peepers? Probably get a copyright strike because my voice is so stunningly accurate.